Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this session. And today I have a very special guest, Jason Hamilton. Jason, welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be on here.
It's a great honor to have you here. Now, Jason is the content manager for Kindlepreneur and a mythology inspired fantasy author. He loves mythology, obviously, history, and geek culture. But when he's not writing books, his favorite hobbies include hiking, chilling with his wife, helping his daughter learn and grow, and also developing his YouTube channel, which is called The Nerdy Novelist. We're going to have links to the channel, obviously, around this video somewhere. And that's where I knew Jason before from Kindlepreneur, but when I found his channel, I was absolutely blown away by the content. And we'll talk about that because he's had a very, I would say, explosive growth of the channel. And so the theme today, if you haven't guessed it yet, is going to be AI, which is the hot thing, has been for the past few months, maybe a year. And so we're gonna try and find out with Jason if it's gonna put us all out of our jobs, or if it can help us, if it can help us out. So, Jason, once again, thanks for being here. Can you share your journey into sort of integrating AI into your writing process? So, what sparked your interest in this and in exploring AI?
Yeah, sure. So part of it is simply because working at Kindlepreneur, it's part of my job to sort of stay on top of things, all of the latest tools and tech, and figure out how they can be useful for authors or not. And then I just really got excited by the prospect of AI. But really, it actually goes back to a couple of years ago. I was writing my second fantasy series, and I had written two books, and I was in the middle of the third one when I started releasing the first book, and then I released the second book a week later. And what ended up happening is, even though I had these really high expectations for this series, it just absolutely nosedived. I think I lost a whole bunch of money in the ads trying to get it to work, and it absolutely just killed my creativity and my drive to keep writing. And I'd been writing like crazy for the years leading up to that. I think I wrote like 10 books in a year roughly. It was a lot of books. And the that third book in that series that I had been writing at the time ended up taking me a whole year to finish after that, because of just how much it really burnt me out. And I know a lot of authors go through this. A lot of authors deal with burnout and with a lot of different issues around just how much work it takes to write a book. Because let's face it, like, it is not easy to write a book, especially if you're writing fiction. It is a insanely difficult thing. And then we put it on Amazon for $5 and expect to make some money from it when everybody else is doing the same thing. And like, it's a hard thing. And then we have to market it, and we have to do all these things, put money behind it, buy a cover. uh, it's just a lot, right? And I'm an entrepreneur, right? I like to uh, figure out cool ways to make money or gain an audience online and things like that. And I gotta say, having studied that for a while, writing books is one of the most, let's say, work intensive ways that you can do that. um, it's actually a lot easier to make money doing other things. And especially because you're putting all this time into this little uh, product that only costs $5. It's just insane. And so, all that to say is, it takes a lot of work. It took me a lot of work, and I just got burned out. And it wasn't until AI came around that I started to think, oh, there might actually be something that can really help me with this. And the more I got into it, the more I learned, and then the AI improved. The more I realized, yeah, I can actually tell my stories again with this technology, and it really helped me get out of burnout. And to the point where I'm writing and producing again. Not quite like I was before, because now I have my YouTube channel and other things also taking up time, but still making that consistent output. And I've also found, just through my time at the channel, I found so many people who are in similar situations that I was in, or who have other challenges that make it difficult for them to write books. So they might have ADHD or autism or dyslexia or burnout, all kinds of different things that might get in the way. And AI has been sort of that creative spark to get them back into the groove, or get them excited about even trying in the first place. So that's been my experience so far, and it's just been a blast. And anytime there's a new update, everyone's just like, "Oh, I want to go see what I can do with this now." So hopefully
Yeah,
that answers your
definitely.
question.
I think it's something that when I first looked into it, I was skeptical. I think, like everyone. But if you really, really dig deep, it's like a rabbit hole. You're never able to
Mm-hmm.
escape once you
Oh
try it.
yeah,
It's so, I would say, addictive at some point as well. Especially if you look at all these.
100%.
Yeah, there's a couple sites that I think aggregate all these tools, and apart from the fact that there's like 20 coming out every single day, and there's so many things that they can do, and it's like, where were they, how did we cope before before AI? Seems
I
many
know.
times.
I'm already like, I get comments, and this is not a bash against any of the comments or the commenters, but I'll get people complaining about these tools sometimes in the comments of my YouTube videos, and I'm like, do you guys remember what it was like before we even had this? Like this, everything is just so much better now with these tools. Like it's like trying to do math before calculators. Can like trying to remember what that was like. It's crazy.
Definitely, yeah. So you got to AI out of a bit of a writer's block and burnout moment, and fast forward to today. What does it look like these days? So how is what's the AI's role in your current writing process?
So it's a bit of a hybrid process. If I'm speaking realistically, how I practically use it in my process, um, it's a bit of a hybrid process. I usually have like the AI in one monitor and then my work in another, and I kind of just go back and forth. Like I'll just be typing it out myself, um, and then I'll get to a part where I'm a little stuck, and I'll say, well, how would it do that? And or I'll be plotting out a book, and I might have some good ideas and I'll put them in there, but then there might be a part of the story where I'm like, I'm not really sure what should go here, or I need a side character that can do this, and either I just don't have any ideas at that moment, or my brain's tired. Like one of the things that we don't talk about too often in the writing process is just how uh, tired it can make you. There's a lot of decision fatigue with writing because you're making a lot of tiny decisions along the way with everything you do. And AI can really reduce that decision fatigue. So you get up to a little bit of a block, and suddenly you can just say, hey, AI, give me 10 ideas for a character who can help this character in whatever. You just give it whatever problem you're dealing with, and it can give you ideas. And those ideas might be helpful, they might not be, but usually, even if they aren't helpful ideas, they usually are good at helping you understand what not to do, and it can just get your brain thinking, and you can move on from there. So yeah, it ends up being a pretty hybrid approach. On my channel, I do teach people how to do it essentially from scratch. So if you were to write a book with nothing but AI, what would that look like? But I think realistically, practically, it doesn't happen that way. Usually, you'll use AI in one part of the process or another, wherever you find yourself stuck, or um, in certain situations where maybe there's a part of the process you don't particularly like, you can give it over to the AI and let it do some of the grunt work for you.
Yeah, and I think it also comes down to it's one of the things that you have to find your own kind of process, I think, in the tools that you're most familiar with and things like that, because there's so many, like I said. But what would you say? I mean, obviously we are here, so we are um, all about the benefits of AI. Any challenges you've
Mhm.
experienced, or anything that really you don't like about AI as it is now?
Yeah, so there are definitely some challenges with AI. Um, Most of them have to do with just the fact that the AI isn't perfect yet. It's still getting better, although we've seen it get much better than it used to be already just in the last year. Um, but I would say the biggest challenge that many authors face right now is the like censorship. I know a lot of people get upset about censorship. The big models like ChatGPT or Claude, the ones that most authors are using, the ones that are generally considered the best, tend to have a dislike towards things that authors often talk about in their fiction. So if you have any excessive violence or sex or anything like that, it's just not going to go there. And so that frustrates a lot of authors. It's not really as much of an issue for me because I write clean fiction, but it's definitely something that I've run into it because even though I write clean fiction, I still have like epic battles and things in a lot of my fantasy. And so if you get too graphic there, then you'll run into that, and that's an issue that isn't likely to go away anytime soon. So the you know there aren't that many ways to get around it, at least with the main models. You have to find some more obscure large language models that don't write quite as well or respond quite as well as Claude or ChatGPT. So that's, I know, one challenge that people have. Um, but otherwise, I find it to be a really liberating thing. I certainly get a lot more benefit out of it than I see with drawbacks. Um, but I think it depends from person to person. Depends on what you write. Depends on your style. I'm not particularly picky about style. I just think if it's readable, then I'll use it. Um, but yeah, it just depends from one author to another, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's again, it's down to trying things and seeing what works. But I did have a bit of a philosophical question in asking. um, do you
Yeah.
think that those who use AI might have a sort of a competitive advantage over the others, or is it just a matter of different tools, different used in different ways?
So yeah, I do think that AI authors that are using AI, integrating AI, will have some kind of competitive advantage. But it's mostly because they'll be able to do the same amount of work that another author can do, and do it with less headache and maybe a little bit faster, um, things like that, and maybe even a little bit better too, because AI, depending on how you're using it, can allow you to do more in less time. And yeah, so it depends on the person and how you're using it, but it can definitely give you an advantage. I just don't think it's going to be as crazy as everybody thinks, because there are certainly going to be people using AI the wrong way, which is just churning out books without really any regard for quality, and that kind of thinking is not going to help you have to really be using AI more thoughtfully than that to get any advantage out of it, which is not that much different from the way a normal person would do it. So
Yeah, definitely.
hope that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, sure, of course. I'm thinking a lot of people when they talk about AI, there's some people that say, "Oh yes, I've tried it," and they're kind of interested in things like that. Other people are completely scared by the whole technology behind it or anything like that. And so, how would you say how steep do you think the learning curve is for someone to start and start learning AI to use in writing?
Yeah, that's kind of hard to say for me at the moment because I've been so deep into it for a long time now. It's all second nature to me, but I don't think it's that hard. But the problem that I see people get into is they just like open up Chat GPT because that's what they've heard is the best, and they say, write me a story about, you know, a murder mystery about a woman who, you know, and they give it a scenario, and then it gives them a very lousy answer, and they say, well, obviously AI is no good, it sucks, it's, you know, the this prose is horrible, all of these things. But the problem is your prompt was bad, right? And I think that if you can learn the good prompts, then you can do it. And it's not necessarily like, oh, I got to become a prompt engineer. Like that's overwhelming to people to say, I've got to learn all these things. Um, you can, there's actually just a very select few prompts. I did a video called The 7 Prompts You Need to Write a Book. And it really comes down to about 7 prompts to go from an idea to a finished book. And some of those prompts you'll be using over and over again. But it really is simple once you know the structure and the techniques on how to do it. And as these tools get better and better, it'll get even easier. And so um, I don't think it's that hard, honestly. I think you just need to know how to do it. And all it is like you can take a technique that I've outlined and just use that, and it's not that hard. But yeah, a lot of it depends on the frameworks or the examples that you give it. So, for instance, I will use Claude as an example because Claude is my favorite at the moment. Um, you with Claude, you have a what's called a large context window, which means you can put more stuff into it, and it'll be able to remember it all. And so often I'll construct this huge prompt that includes like a sample chapter of my book so it knows my style. And then I'll give it instructions on what I want to write. And then I'll give it a list of all of the story beats I want it to hit. And it'll be this like super long prompt, but actually, it, you know, really simple in what it's trying to get across. And then maybe I'll have a style prompt to tell it what style to do it in. And that might be a style prompt that I've just been using over and over again. So you don't have to rewrite it every time. You just get the pieces of what this should look like. And then you hit send, and it's able to write an entire chapter or an article or whatever it is you're trying to write. Um, and all you need to know are just what are the pieces of that, and then you just copy paste and go from there.
Yeah, because a lot of people maybe don't know, but correct me if I'm wrong. If you have a good prompt or very good prompt, it's, you know, the battle is half won already, because that's the main, you
Yeah,
know, probably the main part of doing it right, essentially.
yeah. And the nice thing about prompts is you don't have to come up with them on your own. You can see what other people have done and just use those. And that's, yeah, you're halfway there. There is a little more to it than that. I will say, like the prompts, like when I say there's 7 prompts to write a novel, those are 7 starting prompts, really. One of the skills that you do kind of need to learn that's a little bit different is how to interact with an AI, particularly if you're in like the brainstorming phase or you're outlining. A good amount of the work required to get quality output from the AI is to go back and forth a little bit. So it may give you
Hmm.
an answer and you say, okay, I like this part, but I don't like this. Let's try it again with, change this about the character, and then it'll give you more based on those parameters. Because the more you can give it in terms of those parameters or examples or etc., the better it will get because it's constrained by those parameters. And so there's a term in marketing which applies to AI a lot, which is constraint fosters creativity. So you give it parameters and then say do this thing, it can get pretty creative. And if it's too general or too stereotypical or everything or something like that, that means you haven't really gone back and forth with it enough and worked with it. So there is more to it than just say give me XYZ and then it gives you something. There's a skill in learning to converse with the AI, which is not necessarily something that can be taught so much. It's just something you have to get experience with and try. But don't just stop at
Yeah, because
one prompt and use the output it gives you.
essentially you have to teach it, for example, context and things like that. And I know with Claude, I think, for example, again, correct me if I'm wrong, you can actually feed it some PDF material or some, in other formats. Is that correct?
Yeah, Claude has 100,000 token window, context window, and that might seem like a scary term to some people. What that means, tokens are like little bits of information that a AI can understand, and usually there's um, sometimes a token can be a word, sometimes it's like half of a word, and so 100,000 tokens is roughly equivalent to 75,000 words. And so what that means is you could put the entire Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone into Claude and it will understand the entire thing, which is pretty incredible. It's something that none of the other models can do right now, which is why Claude is my current favorite, because that's actually really helpful to be able to put in huge prompts like that. Now, you might say, well, why would I need to put the entire plot of Harry Potter in there? You don't. But there are things that people will use, like you can put your novel into it and say, write me a story Bible. Give me a description of the characters, this character, this character, this character. Tell me about this artifact, and have it map out all of the different components of your book. That's really useful if you're creating a story Bible. And Claude can do that for you where the others can't right now, at least. I'm sure there's rumors heating up right now about ChatGPT, some big updates coming to ChatGPT over the next 3 months or so. It was recently confirmed that DALL-E 3, their new image generator, is going to be coming to ChatGPT Plus in October. So that's exciting. And I'm sure we can expect a lot more exciting updates like that. But right now, I'd say because of certain things like this context window, that makes Claude the current reigning champion, in my opinion. There are definitely issues with Claude as well, but yeah,
Do you
it's
use
cool.
any of the image generation software like DALL-E, for example, or Midjourney?
Yeah, I use Midjourney for a lot of things. It's probably the primary one that I use. It's the only one I have a subscription for. I tried
Mm-hmm.
DALL-E 2 back in the day, and it there was a brief moment when DALL-E 2 was the best one, and then Midjourney updated, and it suddenly became the biggest one that everyone was using. And so I still use Midjourney. It looks like DALL-E 3 is going to be pretty insane though, and you'll have access to it if you have ChatGPT Plus. So that'll be really cool. but yeah, I do use it for certain things. I have a website of my own. I'll use it to help generate images for that. I'll use it for things like creating interior art for my books. So like for each chapter, I might have an interior art piece. And that's something that's a good example of something that I would never have had before because I couldn't have afforded the art. You know, I couldn't have afforded 40 different pieces of original art. That just would have been way beyond my budget. But now I can do that with AI. And there's the whole ethical debate on whether you should be paying artists or an AI to do those things. And that's, not necessarily a debate I want to get into. But in this particular use case, the artist was not getting any money from me anyway, because it's just not something I had in my books before and couldn't have afforded to do it anyway. But it's a nice little thing that I can do now that AI art is something accessible to me.
Yeah, I was going to go into that debate a little bit, but mainly on as of recording this, there's just been an update by Amazon where essentially, I'm sure by the time you see this, you'll all know that Amazon is essentially asking whether or not you've used AI in your book, or I think it's extensively, or in a certain percentage. So are we worried? Are we not worried? What's coming, do you think?
I think a lot of authors who are worried have very powerful imaginations about what Amazon might be doing. The only thing that Amazon has told us is that they are collecting information. And I have no reason to believe that it is anything other than that, because people underestimate the power of information. Just knowing, because when you go in and you specify whether your book was using AI or not, you can, there's space to say what tools you used. I think Amazon is figuring out what tools are people actually using practically to create AI content. Is it ChatGPT? Is it Claude? Is it Midjourney? What is it? I think, I don't know why they're looking to do that information, but we do know that Amazon has their own AI platforms that they are developing. So they're probably going to look at who are the category kings for those particular, in each different sphere. But Amazon is not anti-AI. I think that's what people are worried about. They do care about reader experience. So if there are tons of just really bad, crappy Amazon books out there that are written with AI, then they would care about that. But I think they're smart enough to know that just because someone used AI at some point in the process doesn't make it a bad book. And this might be a way of gathering information on that and saying like, oh, people loved this group of books and they all used AI at some point or another. And with this data, they can figure that out. But they're not labeling any of these books. Their main aim is to make money, and they know that there are going to be books written with AI that will make them money, and there are going to be books out there that readers don't love, that were poorly written. And so it's kind of up in the air right now what Amazon's going to do with all of that information, but right now it is just collecting information. And while it is part of their terms of services to like, while it is part of their terms and services now, they want you to specify, and you should, like, if you are an above the board author who does things, tries to stay within all of the legal practices and everything, like, you should disclose whether you used AI or not. But I know, just because I know people and I've seen the comments on my YouTube channel, there are going to be lots of authors who used AI and just are not disclosing it. And first of all, I don't recommend that, because if Amazon ever does find out, that would be grounds to shut down your account. Um, just because you used AI is not grounds to shut down your account. But if you used AI and then didn't disclose it, that could be. So that's why I don't recommend you do that. But on the flip side of that, I'm not entirely sure Amazon's going to have a good way to figure that out. You know, AI is getting better and better. And if you're using AI the right way, it's going to be very, very hard for any kind of AI detectors to really know if your book was written with AI or not. So it's kind of an interesting thing. It's an ongoing development, but I can say this for sure: like, your book is not going to be taken down because you said that it was written with AI. It's not going to be labeled as an AI book, at least not for now. Amazon just appears to be collecting information on that.
Bit of a cheeky question. If Amazon were to label your book and say written with the assistance of AI, not written by AI, would you be okay with that or not?
I would personally be okay with that, mostly because I'm very open about my use of AI anyway. But I know that if Amazon were to do that, suddenly 80% of all of the people that were disclosing that they were using AI, they would just stop disclosing it. And I think Amazon knows that, and so I kind of doubt that they're going to make that move unless they are extremely confident that they can identify the AI written books themselves, that's going to be hard. And I really doubt that Amazon, or anybody for that matter, is going to be able to do that.
Could it be that they are training a mega AI on what we are telling them and what we are uploading? And in some way, they've got this huge, because they've got a huge pool of information already, but with all the ebooks. But is there something that is this something that maybe helps them train their own model? Let's say like that.
Let me preface this by saying we have no information on that, so this is all purely my speculation. But that said, I think Amazon has been training their own AI on authors' works this entire time. They would never admit that, because authors would have a heyday just going with that information. But if you look at Amazon's terms of services, there are clauses that could be interpreted in the sense of, we give them permission to train their AI on our books. Whether they are or are not is unclear. Like, we don't know. So please, no one say that, oh, Jason said that Amazon is training their AI on our books, because we don't know that. We don't know anything. But I really would be surprised if they weren't. So take that as you will. But I do think that this whole thing about collecting information on which books were written with AI and which ones were not is definitely part of their overall strategy for developing their own AI, for sure.
Cool. Thanks, Jason. Very last question. For someone who's never even opened ChatGPT, and for a brief moment in Italy, it was actually banned. I don't know if you knew this, but we couldn't access it because we had, like, when you used to go on ChatGPT, you had a big emblem of the Republic of Italy, and big thing that this is banned, and then after 3 or 4 days it was back. But anyways, for those who have never even used ChatGPT, what would you say is the best starting point to start getting a bit getting familiarized with AI and starting to use it for writing, of course?
Well, I'm going to put a shameless plug in here and say, go watch my videos, because I have a lot of videos kind of introducing people to the concepts of AI and specifically how to write fiction with AI. Because while they are simple, they're not necessarily something you're going to intuitively or be able to figure out just by going to ChatGPT and messing around with it. Um, so definitely go check that out. But my recommendation would be to go to either ChatGPT or Claude, because right now the two are probably the two best. Claude, I think, is only available in the US and the UK at the moment. I'm sure that will change eventually. There are other ways
VPN.
to get your hands on it if you're persistent. Uh,
Yeah.
but those are the two best, and I would just go start interact with it. Don't just say write me, an epic fantasy book and be disappointed when it can't do it. Um, Go and start just playing around with it. My main recommendation that I give people is, first of all, ask yourself, what is your least favorite part about writing? Because everyone has one. Um, Nobody likes the entire process, in my experience, because writing is a process. It's a series of steps. You might like the outlining phase. You might like writing the prose. You might like editing afterward. You might like the marketing. But I guarantee you, not everybody likes every single one of those steps, right? There's a point in the process where you reach a wall, you reach a pain point where it's not so fun. I would start there, right? So let's just say it's marketing. Let's say it's book descriptions. You hate writing book descriptions. Well, just go and experiment with ChatGPT, give it some information about your book, and see if it can write a decent book description. I feel like that's kind of the gateway drug for a lot of authors right now, are book descriptions, marketing, social media posts, things like that, which AI is usually pretty good at with those particular things. And then if you really, really enjoy the writing yourself and you don't want to use AI for that part, then that's fine. Like, don't, you know, spend your time where you get the most joy and where your strengths are, and let AI help you augment the rest. I think that's the best way to go about it.
Thanks ever so much, Jason. Thanks for being a guest of our event.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure.
Thanks again. And guys, I do recommend you check out Jason's channel. It's very, very interesting, very fascinating. I like how he makes it all look so easy. And I've tried myself. It's not super easy, but it's so much fun. So I do recommend it, and I recommend Jason's channel. So once again, thank you, and I will see you in the next session.